Spiraling COVID crisis at a Scarborough long-term care home.
I'm leaving him to die there, and it breaks my heart.
As desperate families protest the conditions at homes across the province, tonight we're learning another senior has died at one of the biggest outbreaks in Toronto.
He was enthusiastic about everything. He was bigger than life.
He went exactly the way he would have wanted, on the water, in the blazing winds. Exactly what he loved.
Yeah.
And a silent memorial for a kiteboarding pioneer known for living life out loud and to the extreme.
True, I'm not good at a one-night stand. Yeah.
Plus, Pickering's own Shawn Mendes teams up with another superstar Canadian. We've got the chart-topping details to send you to sleep humming. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. Almost 24 hours with no updates from Rockcliffe Care Community Home in Scarborough. Tonight, an update officials have warned was coming. Another resident there has died with COVID, pushing the death toll at that home to 8 people. But it's not just that home dealing with an outbreak. And today, families staged a protest to demand better conditions. Kelda Yoon begins our coverage tonight.
Family members protested outside Queen's Park today. They saw how bad things got in long-term care homes during the first wave. Now they're worried tragedy will repeat itself.
Some are saying goodbye to their parents out that dirty window. Some are saying goodbye to their parents over Skype. We can't do this again.
Sarah Bateman remembers visiting her 81-year-old dad in his nursing home in Mississauga during the first wave.
It looked like a war zone.
She says there doesn't seem to be many improvements since. Her dad is now in his own room, and staff are checking temperatures regularly, but not much else.
I'm leaving him to die there, and it breaks my heart because I don't know what's going to happen. There is a shortage of PSWs. There's a shortage of nurses because they're scared for their family.
She said another troubling thing, she asked to have her dad tested for COVID, but was told there were not enough kits. She's also worried staff aren't getting their tests back quick enough.
Testing continues to be a serious problem, and it's taking too long to get test results back. There's been a slight improvement, and in some parts of the province it seems better, but it could take 3 to 4 days to get a test result back, which is 3 to 4 days too long.
The province today saying they are committed to improving testing.
We need mandatory 100% testing.
We've got the rapid tests coming. They're not coming as fast as I would like them to come. We are revamping our criteria for our long-term care homes in these zones to reduce access.
Minister of Long-Term Care Mary Lee Fullerton also said today improvements have been made since the first wave.
The data shows our homes are doing much, much better. 92% of our homes have not a single resident case right now.
Any of us can't just say, oh,
Infectious disease specialist Dr. Allison McGeer says while there are fewer outbreaks right now because we learned from the first wave,
we underestimated how challenging preventing and managing outbreaks was going to be, and we didn't do enough work to make sure that people in long-term care were adequately protected.
She says one effective way to prevent infections is to have everybody who works in a nursing home isolate themselves from the community. That, though, would be costly.
There were things that we chose not to do because they're expensive and because people thought that, maybe we could get away with it.
She also says the rule that PSWs can only work at one facility doesn't apply to those who work for an agency.
So we created a base rule, and that's probably done some good, but we didn't make sure it applied all of the time to every circumstance.
These rapid tests that the government has been touting, they are slow to be used because many health officials are still unsure of just how accurate, just how reliable they are. So there is that hesitancy, and studies are still being done to see just how effective they are at detecting COVID-19. Kelda Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
Province-wide, nearly 1,500 new COVID-19 infections were reported today. More than 120 people have died with the disease in the past week, 10 in just the past 24 hours. Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley looks at why we're not hearing more about them.
Melvina Shabes tested positive for COVID-19 a week and a half ago and died last Tuesday in her Toronto retirement home.
My mother, being a Holocaust survivor, survived atrocities, and something like COVID in a few days just took her away from us.
She came to Canada in the late 1940s, got married, and lived the rest of her life in Toronto.
She really was someone who was special in so many ways and died alone, as so many people do with COVID.
The day before she died, her son Jeff could not hug her, only watch her from a distance, wearing full protective gear.
She saw me, she knew that I was there, she called my name, and it was heartbreaking.
Shaybes is just one of the growing number of victims in this second wave of COVID-19. While the month is only half over, more Ontarians have already died in November than in any month since summer began.
On a daily basis, we're having dozens of people die across the country. And I think we've lost sight a bit of the lives of the individuals who have died of COVID-19.
Dr. Nathan Stahl believes Ontario's political leaders are putting far too little emphasis on the deaths.
It seems to be that there's an acceptable loss of life that the government is willing to tolerate to keep our economy open and to keep our businesses running. And that should be unacceptable to every Canadian.
In recent weeks, during his daily news conferences, Premier Doug Ford has not spoken about people dying. We asked him why not.
Nothing weighs more on me than when I talk to family members on the phone. And they tell me, I met a lady the other day that came up to me and said, I want to thank you for doing a great job, and I lost both my parents in long-term care a week apart.
It becomes easy to lose track of the faces, the lives, the tragedy that families are experiencing, and I think it's time to return to that.
The family of Malvina Shaybes has had to hold its daily mourning rituals outside so that friends and members of her synagogue could attend. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Vaughan.
Despite the dire consequences of the pandemic, city officials in Toronto had to break up several large gatherings over the weekend.
This included responding to a large birthday party being held in a commercial storage unit in the Kipling and Bloor area of Etobicoke. Upon arrival, Toronto police officers observed in excess of 100 people in attendance.
That storage unit party Chief Pegg was telling us about was one of 25 complaints made about social gatherings on private property over the weekend. The city also charged 5 restaurants for not complying with indoor dining restrictions and handed out 4 warnings. As surging cases continue to shut down sectors of the economy, today the Premier said an update on schools is right around the corner from the Minister of Education.
I know the minister is going to be coming out in the next little while, coming up with a plan for the holidays, and I think it will work well, his plan that he's putting together.
The Premier wouldn't elaborate on what those plans would be, but the provincial government has said their last resort would be to shut down schools during this second wave. Toronto's kiteboarding community is in mourning tonight after a pioneer in the sport known around the world for his excellence on the water fell victim to its dangers yesterday. Dahlia Ashry shares how he's being remembered tonight.
The place where a kiteboarder pioneer so often graced the world with his skills was tonight the scene of a somber tribute. Jason Maloney, known affectionately by friends as Jason Ghost Rider Maloney.
It's totally tragic what happened to him, and I think everyone here is completely devastated from losing a good friend like him.
Extreme windy conditions yesterday, leading to a frantic scene on the beach. Around 3 p.m., Toronto Police's Marine Unit in rescue mode. Police say up to 6 boarders on the water at the time. One was in serious distress and later died. Friends say it was Maloney.
He went exactly the way he would have wanted, on the water, in the blazing winds. Exactly what he loved.
Maloney has been riding the waves and air for almost 15 years. Now tributes of him are flooding social media.
I love all the learning, I love big wave riding, I love all the efficiency that you get with foil riding. And for our crazy gusty conditions, it's a beautiful thing.
Interviewed after a ride at Lake Simcoe a few days ago, his friends say usually he mastered the gusty conditions. Members of the kiteboarding community say yesterday was particularly dangerous.
When it goes to that high, it's unforgiving. Little errors can occur, and obviously that is what happened yesterday.
Today, a moment of silence for a man who lived life out loud.
He was enthusiastic about everything. He was bigger than life.
Lucas Novak was Maloney's friend for over a decade.
Never forget him. It's the hardest thing that happened to us here.
Known by many as the father of kiteboarding, he'll be best known for soaring to extreme heights.
He was an incredible icon in kiting. Watching him was a true epic experience on the water.
An experience she's devastated she'll never get again. Dahlia Ashry, CBC News, Toronto.
Coming up, the trial continues for the man who killed 10 people and injured 16 others in a van attack that rocked Toronto last year. His lawyers argued his autism diagnosis should lead to him being found not criminally responsible. But how is Ontario's autism community reacting? We'll have that for you. Plus.
And we are still looking at winds playing a factor because snow squalls in the forecast and some flurries into the GTA. I'm meteorologist Colette Kennedy. Your forecast coming up after the break.
This was the scene in the beach earlier today where crews have been busy all day cutting up fallen trees and dealing with these cars that are severely damaged as well. Yesterday's powerful windstorm swept across much of southern Ontario, while electricity has been restored to most of the homes in Toronto that lost power. Hydro One is still dealing with outages across the province. We spoke with one East End resident who said the wind sounded like a freight train.
Used to wind, but never that intensity, and it just made a huge boom, and I immediately knew it was one of my trees. The limb flew 18 feet directly onto my car. As you can see, it got most of it. It has the trunk, the hood, the roof, the two of the windows, and little dings everywhere, so it was very bad.
The storm also hit this COVID-19 testing site in Brampton. The South Fletcher's Sportsplex location was closed today, so the damage could be cleaned up. Officials are working to rebook appointments for those who were scheduled to be tested today. Taking a look outside, and a much quieter scene tonight, but a chilly one out there as we take a live look at the Toronto Harbor. Let's get meteorologist Colette Kennedy in now. And Colette, quite a difference 24 hours makes.
Thanks, Chris. And I thought we would just do a quick recap of some of the peak wind gusts from the storms from yesterday. I know many would like to forget about it, but hard to if you're still doing some cleanup or if you were one of the ones without power. So Niagara, some of those wind gusts over 140 kilometers an hour. Port Colborne over 130. Caledon 120, and look at this, for Toronto Island it was nearly 120 kilometers an hour, and Pearson coming in at 100, and Windsor 91. Waterloo, by the way, 117 kilometers an hour. I mean, just incredible. These are some hurricane force winds that we're talking about came through that front end line of storms that moved through along with the strong winds. So what do we have in store now? Well, just some lake effect flurries. Winds are still a factor here, but not nearly as strong as they were. Midweek, sun comes back, still chilly, and then it's going to be a complete flip-flop because at the end of the week, we're going to see the temperatures rising well above seasonal. I'll get to that in just a moment. I do want to mention the snow squall watch that we do have into portions of cottage country around Barrie. We're looking at this through this region and over towards even London, Middlesex through here because of those winds coming across the lake. It's highly localized, but one of these streamers, especially if it kind of sticks for several hours, locally 10 to 15 centimeters of snow possible. A quick recap of some of the temperatures from today. Extreme eastern Ontario was 7 and 8 degrees, Windsor 7. In between, though, we struggled up to 5 degrees in Toronto. And a look at the streamers, you can see how they just come across as those winds. They'll be picking up again tomorrow, turning more towards the northwest from the west, and that kind of gives you the direction. So flurries coming into the GTA, yes, especially towards tomorrow morning and overnight tonight, we'll see that risk. And see London, if you kind of get caught in one of these, that's why you're into the watch there for some of these snow squalls, because there you could see some of these accumulations. But otherwise, you know, it's the kind of conditions where you actually have sunny skies at times, and then all of a sudden you have the whiteout and reduced visibility. Wednesday, the setup is quite nice. The winds will back off, so we'll see these leaving us, especially once you get past the morning hours on Wednesday. Some cloud cover will move in later in the day, but primarily, although it's cool, there will be quite a bit of sunshine coming back for that midweek period. Overnight tonight, the temperature's looking like this, and again, that chance of flurries or even a light mix at times. And by tomorrow afternoon, very little change in the temperature, so high. Not going to be 7 tomorrow for Windsor, just 3 degrees. And a look overnight tonight around the Golden Horseshoe with some of these readings around freezing, up to 2 degrees for St. Catharines. Tomorrow, we are talking about those temperatures being below seasonal, kind of similar to today, even a little bit cooler. Wednesday, cooler still. And check out Wednesday morning. It's going to be -4 Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. We'll have a slight wind chill there, even though the winds will be backing off. And then looking ahead towards, that's the warm-up, Chris, that's going to be coming at the end of the week. So it's that whole seesaw factor we're going to be seeing in the forecast, and things go completely the other direction.
What a roller coaster. Thanks, Colette.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
Another difficult day in court for the families of the victims in the Yonge Street van attack. Today, Alec Minassian's defense team began to argue why he should be found not criminally responsible. The court also heard about Minassian's demeanor on the day of the attack from Minassian's own father. Trevor Dunn is following the trial for us.
Oh, hi. Good to see you there.
Alec Minassian seen here in a school project. The video submitted by the Crown as evidence. It's a brief glimpse of Minassian before becoming a notorious killer.
You just turn them on.
Today, Minassian's lawyer began to argue why he should be found not criminally responsible for killing 10 people and wounding 16 others in the Yonge Street van attack. The defense admitted Minassian is not a psychopath, not narcissistic, does not have antisocial personality disorder, and he's not a malingerer, meaning he's not faking it. According to the defense, the sole relevant diagnosis is autism spectrum disorder. Because of it, they argue Minassian did not understand wrongfulness, and at the time of the van attack, he lacked the capacity to decide whether the act was right or wrong.
It's shocking, and I think it is just upsetting to the autism community as a whole that would be kind of the argument.
According to Autism Ontario, 1 in 66 Canadian children are diagnosed with ADR. In this province, about 135,000 people have the disorder. People with autism aren't usually violent, and advocates worry Minassian's defense will stigmatize them.
I wouldn't say that a person with autism is violent by nature. That's just like saying human beings are violent by nature.
The trial's first witness was Minassian's father, Vahe. He dropped off his son at a Starbucks the morning of the van attack. Asked about his son's demeanor, Minassian said there was no difference. If anything, it was more upbeat. He seemed happy. Minassian had just been offered a computer programming job making $70,000 a year. I remember it was a nice sunny day, his father testified, and the conversations were very positive. Asked about his son's struggle with social interactions and making friends, Minassian said it was one of his greatest challenges, and it stayed with him throughout his adult life. The witness's cross-examination continues tomorrow. Trevor Dunn, CBC News, Toronto.
Now to the demand on food banks in the GTA, and a new report shows we may be on track for the biggest use of food banks on record. COVID certainly has a lot to do with it, but as Ali Chiasson shows us, experts say the worst may be yet to come.
The Daily Bread Food Bank doesn't just put food on tables for those in need, it studies the pattern of need.
We have data from over 20 years of reports to tell us that food bank use has continuously gone up and up over those 2 decades. We're on track to have the biggest number of food bank use on record.
Last month saw an increase in clients by more than 200%, from 10,000 to 25,000 this year. We may not have seen the worst of it yet.
After the 2008-2009 financial crisis, we actually didn't see a peak in food bank use until 2010. So there was a bit of a lag there. So if we're not even seeing the peak of the COVID food bank use, it might come 2 years from now.
We had a 5% rise in food bank usage before COVID, and that was at a time where things were actually quite good. And so if you think back to January, February, a 5% rise ought not to have happened.
The Daily Bread's Who's Hungry report this year suggests that the COVID-19 pandemic exposed the financial insecurity of so many in our cities.
Literally 2 weeks after the shutdown happened, that's when our lineup started. So you start to ask the question around, what were individuals' incomes versus their expenses at that time, and the inability to have the resilience to be able to get through even a couple of weeks.
Tim Williamson lost his job as a crew worker in the film industry in the early days of the pandemic. With so many projects canceled, he's not sure when he'll return to work, so he took up volunteering at the food bank.
Just something I can be doing right now to give back, and there's also a good lunch at the end of the day, which is good.
He used to fulfill orders for production equipment for movies and TV shows. Now he packs boxes of food for people.
It's very close to frontline, and it's one of the most critical elements of this operation.
Also critical, fundamental change. The Daily Bread asks that along with donations this year, they need the public to advocate for poverty reduction in their communities. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Coming up, small town Ontario on the big stage twice. Canadian hometown heroes Justin Bieber and Shawn Mendes team up for a new tune. We've got a sneak soundbite of the Mendes-Bieber bromance after the break. Finally for us tonight, it is a collab straight out of a Canadian dream. Ontario-born pop stars Justin Bieber and Shawn Mendes announced today they've teamed up for a new single. Monster, a fitting name for the new track, as the 13-second teaser created a colossal buzz on social media today. Stratford-born star Bieber and Pickering-born star Mendes announced the song would be dropping on November 20th. Monster will be on Mendes' fourth studio album, Wonder, which is set to be released in early December. And the single marks the first time the two Canadian superstars have worked together. But I bet it won't be the last. And that is it for us tonight. I'll see you back here tomorrow at 11. And we'll leave you now with shots of today's unveiling of Jimmy Wisdom Way. The street was renamed and a mural created to honor the prominent community leader in Little Jamaica. Have a great night.